She hasn't, but I've got deadlines. This is deadlines. I'm like, what's that one? Well, I'm gonna buy
And to reward you for being on time, and because I'm never on time, let's go ahead and get started. I want to thank you all so much for coming out tonight. It is glorious to see so many incredible faces. It has been a little bit since we've had such a robust audience here in the stores, so it's great to see everyone. This is Left Bank Books presents Eileen Giselle for the celebration of the release of Lipstick. I'm Shane Mullen. I'm the events coordinator here at Left Bank Books. It is my honor to present such events. It is fantastic to be able to do so for someone who I've known for so long and have supported and am so deeply enamored with. I think I can say that because we're really close to Valentine's Day, so I'm just getting a little romantic.
I think you just want a rose.
Yeah. Of course I do. We've known each other for a long time. It is amazing to see such talent being able to celebrate another book. When you support Left Bank Books by purchasing a book, tonight's book being a wonderful book to support and to purchase, it helps us continue to not prevent. That's why I should write things down. It helps us to continue our event series. It helps us to produce events for authors, both local and international, national touring authors. We have an incredible event next week with David Archuleta. I will be in conversation with David for his memoir, Devout, which is talking about coming out and leaving the Mormon Church. It is an amazing book that is going to be in a lot of the news media next week. So very excited about that. That's going to be next Friday night at Clayton High School, and he's even going to sing a little bit. So I'm really, really excited for that event. Tickets are on sale on our website, left-bank.com. We have a ton of other events coming up. Bethany Morrow on Monday at the Heavy Anchor for the horror novel The Body, which I also read. I'm not a big fan of horror. I loved it. It was terrifying and gory and so meaningful in ways that I'm like, yes, I understand what you were saying in a terrifying way. So please do check out our event series at left-bank.com. We have events for readers of all varieties. All right, tonight we are here to welcome Eileen Giselle, the award-winning author and Washington University teaching professor of college writing. Lipstick from the Object Lessons series is a short, beautifully designed book about the hidden lives of ordinary things. So that's what the series is. From Revlon to Glossier, from Maryland to Gaga, Lipstick is as shape-shifting and unwieldy as femininity itself. Who wears lipstick today as a matter of routine? And for those who do, is it out of obligation to a strict feminine standard or some other reason entirely? Lipstick reconsiders the beauty world's most conspicuous and contentious tool of artifice. Tossing expired ideas about femininity like so many tubes of melting wax, Lipstick explores how self-adornment can be a source of play, pleasure, and transformation, as well as how lipstick can knock gender norms off balance. Tonight, our conversation partner is Aisha Sultan, a nationally syndicated columnist and award-winning filmmaker and features writer. Her work has run in more than 100 publications, including The Atlantic, The Wall Street Journal, and The Washington Post. She has won several national honors recognizing her writing. Her work explores social change with an emphasis on education, families, and inequality. She frequently speaks at conferences, universities, and corporate training events. And our guest of honor, Aisha, nope. I really should write things down. Everything that comes out of my mouth should be on this piece of paper, but it's not. Eileen Giselle is a teaching professor of college writing at Washington University, St. Louis, Missouri. She is also the film critic for the Hopkins Review, an award-winning literary and culture magazine published by Johns Hopkins University. Her writing has appeared in the Chronicle of Higher Education, The Baffler, Jacobin, Los Angeles Review of Books, Belt Magazine, Current Affairs, Film Quarterly, and Hyperallergic, among other publications. In 2023, she received the Rabkin Prize in Arts Journalism. Without further ado, would you please help me in welcoming our fantastic guests for the evening.
There we go. Okay. I was gonna say, I have a loud voice, not that loud. Thank you, Shane. I'm so grateful to have all of you here, truly. This is kind of what I imagined when I was doing the hard work of writing this book, was just sharing it with others. So I really want this book to be something that sparks conversations, sparks memories, sparks productive disagreements and arguments, because that's what motivated me to write it. I'm really happy that my mom is here, and I'm really happy to see some other family members here. I brought 24 roses to hand out to anyone who filled out the survey that I distributed in the process of writing this book. If you have not gotten a rose yet, and you are in the book, please, and Tiffany, I'm looking at you right now. You're going to get a rose, and Maurice, I also see you, you're also getting a rose. So I also brought them in the spirit of Valentine's Day, because I really feel like Valentine's Day is an awful holiday insofar as it supports compulsory heterosexuality and the nuclear family. But guess what? It can also be something much more fun and felicitous. And that's why I brought roses. Yeah, I'm going to read the introduction to this book. And then I'm going to read a section of this book in which some of the people here are quoted. So in the process of writing this book, I distributed a survey to about 100 people. Hi, Jane. About 100 people. And I did not include every single survey response. What I did was I chose quotes that felt surprising to me, that taught me something about lipstick. The people who filled out the survey were between the age of maybe 18 all the way to maybe 75, 78. So a broad span of generations, a broad span of religious backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, class backgrounds, and that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted a broad panoply of people. My personal narrative anchors this book, but I don't feel like it is the end all and be all. It is not didactic. I didn't write this book because I wanted to promote lipstick at all. And I also wanted to just give a shout out to those who are here who really generously contributed their handwritten stories. So there are 4 stories that serve as like place markers that are handwritten, because I think handwriting is so personal and it reflects our generation. It reflects so many different factors in terms of who we are. And so I felt like that was another way of visually representing what might contour the way we see lipstick. So I will start with part of the introduction, and then I'll shift to a part of the book which is more cultural criticism and also more based on some of the interviews and surveys that were conducted. And then I shall try. It'll be amazing. At age 8, long before my adventures in inattentive babysitting, I joined the ranks of wayfaring laborers. My responsibility was great. Hand-deliver dozens of Avon catalogs to neighbors' doorknobs. If they were pre-festooned with junk mail, I stuffed my wares into the mailbox, a practice I later learned from my father was illegal. Every other week, I marched along our sidewalk-less streets to the addresses printed on sticker labels. Bagged catalogs hung from my arms like heavy plastic wings. The Avon lady lived across the street from the small home I shared with my 3 younger sisters, and incidentally, Mom and Dad. A 40-something grandmother, she might as well have been anointed the Lady of Avon by some distant empress of pulchritude, crowned with an aqua-netted coif and robed in a rotating set of puffy painted sweatshirts. Her powers dazzled by dint of her access to products. While the exterior of her white-shuttered ranch house nearly matched my own, its interior gleamed with peach taper candles, collectible thimbles, and, in the bathroom, a giant bottle of Skin So Soft that splashed all over when one stole a sniff. Her name was Pat Rowland. When her husband Ronnie moved his motorcycles out onto the curb, it meant their garage would host a sale for discontinued Avon items. While my mom would rifle through perfumed roll-on deodorants, one of her few indulgences, I'd scrutinize a shoebox of lipstick samples, each about half the length of my pinky. When Pat mentioned one summer that the neighborhood delivery was hard on her knees, I pounced. I could be her assistant. It seemed too good to be true. $3 or $4 per route, and my pick of any leftover sample lipsticks. I already had door-to-door experience hawking my own homemade fragrances, lemon-scented potions I conjured with a chemistry set. Compared to shilling the fruits of my basement alchemy, this enterprise seemed no more arduous and likely much more lucrative. Over several seasons of St. Louis snowstorms and heat waves, I delivered the catalogs and stashed the cash in my jewelry box. The lipsticks were displayed over the trundle bed I reluctantly shared with my sister Beth. As much as I admired my line of tiny totems snaking along the windowsill, which were repurposed as munitions for plastic army troops to drop on toys below, I became transfixed at how I could transform myself with a careful swipe of a lipstick tube. This was an era in which the lurid fuchsias were fading into a more sober array of browns, plums, and violets. A pale girl with dark hair that flew all over the place, I was hardly a paragon of late 80s beauty, or what passed for that at my public grade school. I was bullied for an array of physical and sartorial deficiencies beyond my control. Hairy legs, uneven bangs, off-brand denim, a scar above my lip earned in dodgeball. Lipstick had a talismanic effect. It livened or soured my complexion immediately. A dramatic mouth on a pale face served to balance out my dark unibrow. Dusty mauve made my eyes look suddenly green. Frosted lilac, on the other hand, made my teeth look downright daffodil. But the perfect lip color made me look and feel impossibly glamorous, as indomitable sauntering through the cafeteria as I felt during a math or spelling quiz. Given that, grade school through junior high, I was often the shortest kid in class, easily mistaken for years younger, this boost was no small feat. That my massive extended family generally censured any style that seemed too showy was just another reason that I, ever the girly gadfly, rebelled a la Revlon at an early age. Though averse to beauty rituals herself, my mother consented to my new passion, amused at times by a brave new shade I chose to wear. In fact, when my 6th grade social studies teacher, Mrs. Taborn, shoved a brown paper towel in my hand and demanded that I remove my lipstick, plush red from Walgreens, if I recall, in front of the class, my mother was indignant. Despite her suspicion of any outsized zest for fashion and pop culture, she took the attitude that, so long as I performed well in school and never asked for spending money, I could do whatever I liked with what I earned myself. And so it was that years before the hormones of delayed puberty colonized my gymnast body, lipstick transformed my meek facade. It felt and still feels more natural to me than my naked mouth. It visually intensifies my too loud laugh, my too deep frown, and too quick smirk. It alerts the world to the most important part of my expressive face long before it moves to action. Without lipstick on, would I have gained the confidence to strut my stuff through the halls of 5 different schools from 1990 to 1994? Would I have, for better and also for worse, mouthed off so often, much to the chagrin of high school nuns, frat boys vying to inebriate me, and untold authorities across adulthood? Though I had no idea of it at the time, I grew up during one of the flashiest, yet most conservative, periods of U.S. history, when what Susan Faludi dubbed the backlash against second-wave feminism was at its peak. Quote, Publications from the New York Times to Vanity Fair to The Nation have issued a steady stream of indictments against the women's movement, her preface to Backlash emphasized in 1991. They hold the campaign for women's equality responsible for nearly every woe besetting women, from mental depression to meager savings accounts, from teenage suicides to eating disorders to bad complexions. As I dimly remember it, the gains of the women's movement just a decade prior were often reduced to Tonight Show punchlines or inaccurate references to smelly hippies torching their brassieres. While Barbie ads preached that girls can be anything, many in my generation developed the sneaky suspicion that this might not be the case. And as the 1990s duly enlightened me, my penchant for lipstick was hardly universal. I feel like a clown, my friend Steph would say when lining her mouth for the High School Musical. I never know what shade looks good on me, bragged others, who, unlike me as a child, had apparently not repeatedly checked out the Color Me Beautiful series from the library. Those laughing are my age or older. Those who shared my countercultural slant took to abrasive lip shades like black and bright blue, as evidenced in our sullen driver's license pics. By my senior year, I was both Alterna girl and lip color connoisseur, nicknamed Eileen Just Smell Good by a guy friend for the trail of Bonnie Bell vanilla frosting lip smacker sillage that wafted in my wake. At the same time I savored the sobriquet, I was experiencing what could only be called a secular feminist awakening. Why were friends at the rival boys' school applying for competitive out-of-state colleges when I was chided for considering the University of Chicago? Why did girls primp for hours before homecoming when our dates rolled off the couch and put on a tie? Why did Sister Maureen scoff, "You've always been ambitious," when informed that I'd won a literary prize for a short story, a Salinger emulation, and alas, the only award with which the National Endowment for the Arts has ever endowed me? Clearly, my love of lipstick, its aura of glamour, escape, and chameleonic personae, butted up against the reality that young women, me included, were so often treated like fonts of humility or mindless pretty objects. Did taking myself seriously as a thinker and doer mean renouncing one of the few things that had consistently and affordably given me everyday pleasure? Was I, like millions of other women, unwittingly participating in my own subjugation by painting my pucker a piquant pink? The short answer, of course not. But as with most matters of gender, power, and femininity, the better, truer answer takes longer to come by and is as messy as a magenta smile at a summer rave. So the next section I'm going to read is a little bit of chapter 4. So in the process of writing this book, one of the chapters that I knew I wanted to write was about lipstick traditions that existed outside of the Western context, but also outside of white supremacist beauty standards, and also sometimes exist in defiance of white supremacist beauty standards. So one of the things that was really fascinating to me and that I felt really grateful for were stories and perspectives from people who shared how they felt about painting their face that was shaped by either race or culture or some other factor that I had never really thought about before in the same way. So thank you to anybody who contributed to the survey, but I feel like for those who trusted me to include their perspectives, especially in this chapter, I feel especially indebted and grateful. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I will read parts of it. And the title of this chapter is Whitewashed Beauty, Appropriation, and Lipstick Legacies. Marilyn Monroe flashes naked teeth between slick cherry lips. Dita Fontees channels goth burlesque with a pert Carmen smirk. Taylor Swift swoons over a mic in Pat McGrath's matte trance, and the shade sells out in seconds. Flip through your mental Rolodex or Insta-feed of lipstick icons, and several are likely white women. The French girl look, emulated by American celebs like Kendall Jenner and Lily Collins, pairs minimal eye and face makeup with red lips on, a presumably pale face. Never mind the fact that French women and French girls are a range of complexions. As a white woman, I've not once been told that a bright lip contradicted my racial identity. From the Brothers Grimm to the Body Shop, I've been taught since girlhood that a bold mouth against alabaster skin makes for a pleasing mien, not to mention pleasing men. Snow White herself was described as boasting lips red as blood and a face as white as snow. As a kid with dark hair and charming complexion, I admittedly appreciated resembling at least one classic Disney princess. But the white as snow bit also felt suspect, conflating so-called innocence, which I patently lacked, and genetic features beyond one's control. Meanwhile, Black women and girls have been discouraged from wearing certain lipstick for at least a century, taught that red doesn't flatter dark skin or that bold hues connote sexual promiscuity. Latinx women have similarly been discouraged, lest they seem, quote, saucy, exotic, loud, sexual, and sometimes even tacky, end quote. Like most double standards based on race and class, those surrounding lipstick have hardly disappeared, even as white supremacist beauty ideals have loosened their grip on mass culture. Haven't disappeared, maybe loosened their grip. When my middle school teacher, Mrs. Taborn, who was Black, singled me out for my 2 red lips in 1992, were race and class at play? As I recall, she wore lipstick in middle age and looked damn good. She was also employed by the St. Louis Public School District, underpaid and overworked decades before I peddled my white frame and bright lips into her social studies classroom. If she had ever been discouraged from donning red lipstick for fear that it would attract the wrong attention, and for professional Black women, those rules have always been more stringent, she may have been trying to protect me, a most studious student, from naively sending out the wrong impression. Or maybe my fire truck mouth was distracting the woman from her lesson on the Spanish-American War. Who knows? Inclusion and diversity specialist Chloe Benson notes that, quote, American beauty discourses often reproduce the dominant white worldview, which privileges white femininity as the ideal. The standard of white beauty is reproduced in subtle and inferential ways within the cosmetics industry. Many people of color who do wish to wear bright lipstick have found that most brands just don't show up on darker lips. Seema, 40, shared with me her mother's penchant for Estee Lauder's maple sugar lipstick. Back in the 90s, this is a quote from her, it was one of the only colors that looked good on Indian skin, as so much of the makeup available was made for white people, end quote. Similarly, MAC's Ruby Roo, a cool red launched in 1999 that has graced the lips of Rihanna and Tracee Ellis Ross, has long been known as a staple for women with darker complexions. Mariama, a Black queer elder millennial that I surveyed, listed MAC's Heroine as her all-time favorite lip shade. Quote, beauty companies have done a poor job at providing a variety of shades for deeper skin tones, she stressed, which fuels this false conception of certain colors being off limits. 18 years after Ruby Woo's debut, the wild success of Fenty Beauty, the cosmetic line Rihanna founded in 2017, catalyzed what beauty insiders have dubbed the Fenty effect. Major brands, both high and low, paying attention to the millions of women with darker skin tones. Say what you will about Fenty as a corporation, Mariama told me, but it truly changed the game for Black women and people of color who love beauty products, pushing other companies to be more inclusive and innovative in their shade ranges. I'm going to skip ahead to a section about Black is beautiful and how Black is beautiful as a kind of political slogan was also co-opted, surprise, surprise, to sell things. Not unlike femvertising, adopting and diluting feminist rhetoric to push products to consumers, by the late 1960s, Black is beautiful was not only a political slogan, but a marketing tool to sell a bevy of cosmetics to Black women. Avon, with its history of Black sales reps, was among the leaders in this respect, placing a series of ads in Ebony magazine proclaiming lip color and a natural afro as complementary. And there's some great images from Ebony Avon ads. As Black is beautiful expanded beauty standards to include dark-skinned Black women, writes Baird, she's one of the scholars included here, new cosmetic companies flooded in to market products to meet the newly modified standard. Of course, Not everyone was thrilled with the tenets of Black is beautiful at the service of white-owned or even Black-owned cosmetics companies. Whether it was Avon and Revlon, owned by whites, or Fashion Fair and Posner, both Black-owned companies, the imperative to paint one's face in order to be beautiful was hardly a revolutionary credo. Revlon wedded to ethnic pride, consumption conflated with liberation. It didn't take a trip to the Fashion Fair counter for Black women to realize something was up. As Baird put it, while Black women were more represented in beauty ideals, they still were not liberated from them. In her 1995 essay, Beauty Laid Bare, Aesthetics in the Ordinary, radical feminist Bell Hooks makes the case that feminine aesthetic pleasure, while crucial to well-being, was not the same thing as excess consumption. For Black women who, quote, have been increasingly socialized by the mass media to assimilate into the mainstream, she argues, hedonistic consumerism is offered as a replacement for healing and life-sustaining beauty. By contrast, quote, learning to see and appreciate the presence of beauty is an act of resistance in a culture of domination that recognizes the production of a pervasive feeling of lack, both material and spiritual, as a useful colonizing strategy. In other words, beauty itself, as seen in oneself and in others, is vitally important, but its pursuit is not synonymous with how much you splurge on Sephora or the local beauty supply store, a lesson clearly germane to those of any race. African American women who came of age in the late 20th century were exposed to a wide array of Black lipstick icons whose beauty did not conform to white dominant culture. Tiffany, 52, points to androgynous icon Grace Jones as lipstick inspo. Quote, their features were so striking and the entire look screamed, I'm running this, I'm fabulous, and people are paying me for it. This was one of the images I really fought to get into the book. Maurice, a self-described Black fat trans femme millennial, cited Black women in the 90s as the ultimate lipstick influencers. The overlining, the way they did ombre lips before it was a thing, she shared. Everything about the makeup look for Black girls in the 90s, the soft glam, speaks to me. Mariama, who also grew up in the 1990s, embraces the idea of lip color as a shield of adornment. Quote, lipstick can be affirming for women who wish to wear it, she underscored. I don't wear lipstick for men or for anyone else. I wear it for myself. I smear it on like armor, like a protection spell that will keep me bold and curious and fiercely true to myself. So I'll end there. Thank you for your time.
So I'm a huge fan of Eileen's and a big fan of lipstick. So I feel like I'm the perfect person to have this conversation with you. And I loved reading the book. I had an advanced copy to read. And as you can tell by the writing, it's not just insightful and challenging parts, but it's also so much fun to read. And especially for women in our generation, because it was just this trip down memory lane to the 80s. I mean, when you read it in here and I heard it again, those little Avon sample lipsticks. And I have not thought about those in so long, but those were precious to me. Those were so precious. And so you guys are in for a treat when you buy the book and read it. I'm going to ask a few questions, and I want you guys to have a chance to ask some questions too. So at the heart of this book, well, the question that you kind of raised in the beginning is this tension between why we wear lipstick, and is it for ourselves or is it for the patriarchy, or because we bought into ideas of commerce as beauty. And so how do you end up resolving that question for yourself through your research, through the writing of this book? Because I think I came to a slightly different conclusion than you. So
I'm not sure I did resolve.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure that was the goal.
Okay.
I feel like my goal was to immerse myself in like competing discourses about what facial adornment means. What does it mean to paint our faces? Like, people have been doing this for thousands of years. And the feminization of painting the face is actually relatively recent, which doesn't mean it's irrelevant. It just means that it's kind of fascinating to think about how cultures all over the world have been painting themselves, shaving themselves, dyeing their hair, doing things to tattooing themselves to like modify their bodies. So why is painting the face so hyper feminizing in a way? And so that was one of the things that I am genuinely curious about. I don't have the answer to that. And I don't want to suggest that if you read this book, you will have the answer. I do feel though that in the process of writing the book, I became more empathetic towards people of different generations and people of different backgrounds in terms of why they either hate lipstick and find it to be demeaning or find it to be unnecessary, but also those who feel that lipstick is fantastic or that lipstick is a form of self-expression. So I felt like one of the things that the book did for me, it didn't resolve this tension between feminism and femininity, but I think it did help me understand how one's experience moving through the world in a body that is deemed feminine, like that experience is different if you grew up in the 1950s than if you grew up in the 1980s than if you grew up in the 2010s.
Right.
It's different if you are a little white girl like I was, and if you're not. I mean, you grew up in Houston?
And
Houston.
it's a suburb of Houston, Texas.
And I feel like part of what I also wanted you to read the book is that even though we have in some ways very different backgrounds, we also have similar backgrounds and also gravitate towards shiny, glittery things.
Right.
Yeah. But we also care about
Right.
social justice issues and like
Right.
politics.
And we want to be taken seriously for
Exactly.
our work. And
Yes.
sometimes, as a woman who is interested, like, I don't even know, I should have told you this before, like in the process of writing, but it came to me later as I was reading your book. There's, I write for the Post-Dispatch, and many years ago, we used to have a fashion and beauty writer. And she and I did a lipstick test where we tested like, I don't know, 20, 30 shades of red and did a little thing in it for the paper and online. And I was very active on Twitter at the time. And I, a few years later, made a critique of the GOP, like Missouri's ruling party. And the response was, you should stick to lipstick with a little lipstick from the state official Republican account on Twitter. And to me, it was just like, okay, like, state power putting me in my place because I have written about lipstick. Can you comment a little about that, like from examples in your book also in which you write about how women are put in their place in this particular moment in particular?
No, I'm really glad you shared that story. I was actually in some ways, as excited as I was to write this book, I was also really nervous to write this book because I mean, most of my long form publications have been like, leftist magazines. like I'm laughing because it's like, it may not seem like it goes together,
Right.
And I also felt like, if I write this book, will anyone take me seriously ever again? Or will people dismiss me as like, oh, she's the one who wrote the lipstick book.
Right.
She's that one.
Yeah.
Is it going to be immediately dismissed as vapid?
Mm-hmm.
So that was an anxiety I had, and I actually still have a little bit. I'll say I still have it a little bit because I've noticed just in the way that the book has been covered already that sometimes people are asking me like, well, what's your favorite lipstick or what's your favorite brand? And I'm just kind of like, I don't care. And again, like well-meaning people are asking.
Right.
So, but to answer your question a little bit better, I feel like part of what I did hear from multiple women across generations, but especially from women who were older than me, was that if they embraced kind of conspicuous femininity, if they embraced bright colors, patterns, ruffles, etc., that was automatically construed as being unserious and less professional, less intellectual. And I really feel like I'm kind of, in terms of my age, I think I'm kind of I'm in between millennial and Gen X. And so that also really influences it influenced the way I saw beauty growing up.
Mhm.
Honestly, I'm really grateful for how weird and edgy a lot of the beauty icons were in the 90s. Like really strange. And I just kind of took for granted that they were all around. You know, like one of the other images I really fought for in this book was one of Katie Lang for MAC. Just because like that's from 1996. Like that, even though I may not have fully appreciated what that was, and I'm not trying to say that like everyone should go out and buy MAC lipstick. I think they're owned by Estee Lauder, bad company. But like the point is, it was still something that kind of shifted the way that I maybe thought of what can be feminine? What does it mean to be feminine?
Right. No.
So I do
absolutely.
feel like, to go back to your original question, like some women in the book were very emphatic about how part of the reason why they eschewed bright lipstick or anything like that was because they just felt like I'm not going to take it seriously. I mean, there are so many other women who are just like, I don't like lipstick. I think it's messy. I don't like putting it on, blah, blah, blah. I mean, that's what there are all sorts of practical utilitarian reasons for why one would not wear it, you know? And I'm certainly not one to judge any of that. But I do think like the answers that had more to do with like not being taken seriously were interesting to me. And then younger women, especially those who are maybe under 30, a lot of my former students were sometimes surprised that that conflation exists, that conflation of femininity and a lack of seriousness.
Interesting. That's
Yeah.
really interesting.
Yeah.
Another delicious part of your book are some of the myths that you bust about lipstick. So
Yeah.
I want you just to sort of tease and share a couple of those because I loved that too.
Okay. One of the biggest myths is that first wave suffragettes wore lipstick in the early 20th century. That is completely false.
I know, right?
Yeah. What's funny, I mean, even recently, I got on Instagram just to promote my book, and it's been a learning experience for me in so many ways. And I think because of my feed and just like I'm posting stuff from the book and content from the book, I'm getting certain types of things on my feed as a result. And I think last week there was like this Swedish pop star, like very beautiful blonde woman who was putting red lipstick on, and she was like, fight fascism, just like the suffragists. And I was like, okay. But then she was basically perpetuating the myth. Well, I foolishly, in the comment section.
Oh no!
I know, yes, yeah, you're seeing this. I foolishly, and I didn't even look at how many followers she has. She's like really famous. I just posted, actually, this isn't true. Exclamation point, smiley face, lipstick emoji. If you want to learn more, read my book. Her response was something to the effect of, I had no idea. I consulted ChatGPT to fact check this. And I said, well, of course you did. Like, I mean, digital discourse has there are so many reputable publications also that have perpetuated this myth.
Yes.
So I am not responsible for busting it. I think that a historian, Lucy Jane Santos, who's in Britain, is the first person to really start to poke holes in it. And then I expanded on it and I did more research to really dig into why this happened. So it's false. I mean, I feel bad about the fact that like maybe I ruined that post, but I don't actually think I did.
No.
I think people probably just ignored it.
And you know, it's so funny, Eileen, because people go on Instagram and become influencers, so people buy stuff. Like you influence people to buy stuff. Well, you really had the sort of, I don't know, this weird analog effect on me because when I read your book, I was influenced to buy a lipstick that you talk about in your book. I was like,
I got do it on purpose.
You got it. And I'm wearing it right now. It's by the Lip Bar, a black-owned, women-owned, Shark Tank rejected.
Yes.
And when I read the whole story, I was like, I have to go buy this lipstick.
Yeah, I mean, I
You like reverse influenced me.
I will say I did enjoy learning about, the only time I really talk about any companies were the kind of efflorescence of Black-owned lipstick companies that have come about over the last decade. So I did describe some of those, and I do talk about like the history of like Glossier because I think they're Their rhetoric is really interesting, sometimes disturbing. But it's not that I do touch on like femvertising quite a bit. But I try to steer clear of suggesting that like buying stuff is the way to, I don't know, identify with feminism, because I feel like that is one of the pernicious effects of femvertising, is the idea that, well, if I just buy this, then I'm contributing to a feminist cause, which I completely reject. But at the same time, I completely reject that premise. I do think there's something kind of nice about the idea that you could buy something and it's not for male pleasure. And I do think, I mean, in my own experience, a lot of men don't even really like bright, messy lipstick. And it's not something that is necessarily a natural draw, in part because it looks incredibly unnatural. And so that's something that also really fascinates me, is like the extent to which like natural beauty is usually fabricated through just as many products, but it doesn't announce its own artifice. It does not announce its own artifice. And so I prefer to look fake. Like, I don't want to look
Like the clean girl aesthetic.
No, I mean, I have a
over
section,
Instagram,
yes, I have a
right?
section about the clean girl aesthetic and how I really think, and this is another thing I learned when doing research for the book. I didn't think about this before, but the clean girl aesthetic, it actually corresponds in some really disquieting ways to a lot of the Victorian white supremacist beauty ideals that were like, you're naturally beautiful if you're white, and your virtue is all you need, so you shouldn't pollute your face with all this unnatural color. So there's this weird way in the late 19th century that eugenics, white supremacist beauty ideals, fear of immigration, fear of the other, fear of color, all coalesce. And in some ways I see certain whiffs of that now.
I was gonna say, it sounds so familiar.
Exactly, yeah. So, but that was really interesting. And I think one of the other big things I learned when doing research for this book is the extent to which like lipstick stigma is often attached to sex work stigma historically. And even the concept of like, she looks cheap. Like, that woman looks cheap. Where does that come from? And often it's connected to like bright paint on the face.
And the attacks like on AOC for her
Oh, yes,
red
yes.
lips. And,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
Well, one thing I want to ask you before we open it up for questions from the audience is there's so many objects that you could have written about, and you know, you kind of explained in the introduction like what drew you to this and like the bigger questions around lipsticks. But what is another object that you would like to write about or that you would like to read about? So
a friend of mine is interested. She's proposing a book on pantyhose. I thought that sounded interesting. It's similar, but it's not exactly the same.
Yeah.
I mean, I do really find objects fascinating. There are over 100 object lessons books, and I was really shocked that lipstick had not been written about before.
Yeah, that is shocking.
Just because it feels so iconic in so many ways. I can't think of any that I would necessarily want to write about. I think for me, the lipstick was more of like a conduit, in a way, for thinking about gender, sexuality, class, power, matters that I've been thinking about and writing about for a long time. So I feel like, I mean, I want people to buy the book, but at the same time, I kind of, when people are really excited, like, oh, I love lipstick, I'm like, buy the book. Buy the book, but it's not, this isn't like, you know, this isn't necessarily about this or this. So, but I feel like the point of the book is not to celebrate consumerism, but it is to celebrate like materiality, because like the tangible, like color, pigments, and like all of that makes a difference in how we live and how like aesthetic pleasure is a real thing. It's a real thing, and I don't think we should discount it.
Right, but so is the tension. Especially for women in our generation.
Yeah.
Women who like, you know, internalize a lot of unhealthy beauty standards related to body, face, and
all
aging. And I think there is this tension of, you know, am I doing this for like some internalized male gaze? Or
Exactly,
is this
internalized misogyny is real.
Is it truly my preference? And you know, that's the work like of consciously unpacking our preferences, which I think your book helped me do.
Good.
You know, it helped me think through that, and also through different cultural lenses. And I'll just wanted to share one of my favorite tidbits. Actually, I'll let you share it. Where was the first tube of lipstick found? I loved this so much.
In the one that I write about.
Yes.
So it was found in what is now Iran. And I think it's 4,000 years old. Let me double check this.
That incredible.
Yeah,
4,000
years old, and it's not necessarily like a tube, but it is like paint in something portable. So it's like a scarlet paste in a stone vessel. It's 4,000 years old, and I dig into the history of lipstick within Iran a little bit, but also how different lipstick regulations, both in the Western world and in the Middle East, they're still extant in some cases, and they still dictate what women can do with their face when they're in public. So
this idea of like thousands of years ago
Yeah.
in Iran, I mean, it just blew my mind. I thought about that. I sat with that for a long time. So yes, audience questions. I mean, I have plenty, but I know there's questions in the audience. Yes.
First of all, Eileen,
Yeah.
thank you so much for hosting this and like
I didn't host,
Well,
James hosting.
thank you so much for being here and like I'm so excited to read this book. You reading out loud is so infectious and
Oh, thank you.
it's amazing.
I'm glad I didn't seem nervous.
I am curious, what was the most like interesting or shocking thing that you found out about lipstick from like my generation, like Gen
Ooh,
Z?
that's a great question.
Yeah.
That's such a good question. So the last chapter is called Toward a Femme-Friendlier Future, ? And there are a lot of Gen Z voices in the final chapter. I asked a lot of my students, one of my former students is here tonight and is also in the book. I really did rely on the intelligence and generosity of young people to help me make this book relevant to Gen Z. So one of the things that I learned a lot about was like the rise of the beauty vlog and how many beauty vloggers are trans women and how trans femininity has really affected beauty vlogging. I really didn't know anything about that. So like I started just taking a look at some of these beauty vlogs. And when I did that, and then I would go into Sephora or Ulta, I would be more inclined to notice like, wait a second, like there are so many amazing photographs on the wall and advertisements that are a lot of gender nonconforming people wearing makeup. This was not the case when I was growing up.
Not at all.
So I really do feel like that was something that I learned a lot about. I also feel like I had heard, of course, of Chappell Roan. Actually, I feel like you might have been one of the first people, and one other person here just tell me about Chappell Roan. But I felt grateful when I wrote this book that Chappell was kind of like at her height at that time. And I'm really glad that she's kind of back in discourse, just because when I wrote the book, I was thinking, what if she disappears? Like, what if I wrote this book and included parts about her and then she just goes away? But no, that didn't happen.
It didn't happen.
No.
Yes. Okay.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Since congratulations,
Thank
it's really
you.
cool. Since this book is part of a series that it sounds like from the introduction to this event they're supposed to be short.
Mhm.
So when you were figuring out like what parts of lipstick history or
Yes.
what level
Great
of
question.
detail in intersectionality, like how did you make some of those choices?
Yeah.
It was very difficult.
Yeah.
So for example, the chapter that I read from, which is the chapter where I attempt to reflect some experiences among women of color, that was a real challenge because I knew I can't represent every culture. I can't represent even every kind of like culture in the United States that has like a lipstick tradition that I'm learning about. So that was a case where I broke it into three sections maybe. And I really let the perspectives that I was able to gather kind of guide me, but I wasn't able to include everything. And I felt like, I wish I could, but I can't. Similarly, when I got into like the myth of the red-lipped suffragette, there's so much about like first wave feminism and the kind of like inherited wealth that many of the prominent first wave feminists were lucky enough to have, which this is not to besmirch them, but it is to say that like the very thing that gave them the ability to have political power in a lot of cases or political influence was the thing that kept them from seeing what other women might be dealing with or how other women might rely on their looks to pay the bills in some cases. So I feel like there were certain parts where I could have gone a lot deeper, where I just had to stop. And in some ways, the fact that I had to write this book so quickly while I was teaching 3 classes meant that I gave myself really strict parameters where I'd be like, all right, this is the next chapter, you know, and so there are elisions in this book. There are absolutely elisions in this book. And what I'm hoping also is that, you know, there are a bunch of footnotes, there are a bunch of, or endnotes rather. So if people want to, they can do more reading on their own. They can hopefully pursue further education because this book is not, you know, it's not saying it at all.
Well, and it's funny because you combine Eileen, the young girl, the young woman, which I loved reading about, with the analysis of Eileen, the professor, you know, which felt like being in a class with you. And I feel like you did that very elegantly
Oh,
in this
good.
book. I would, because I love to read memoir, I would have totally read like the entire memoir of your lipstick escapades.
I don't usually
and-
write personal narratives, so that's, I'm glad to hear that.
Yes.
That was a new thing for me. I usually have that cultural criticism perspective when writing. So incorporating the personal narrative felt necessary
Yes.
because I felt like people need to know where I came from to understand how I have the kind of analytical acumen that I have for this, like where my background influences the way that I see and the way that I interpret.
Right.
But I also, you know, it felt like a risk for me. It felt strange to be writing
well,
about.
it was a huge payoff. It
Okay,
really
good.
paid off. So
Good.
you made the right call. Yes.
Thank you so much for this. I'm thinking about this tension you're unpacking between liberation and social control as they surround lipstick. But I read an article recently about Mar-a-Lago.
Oh
Place.
yeah.
Yes,
Totally
I read
now.
it too.
We're in the age of the med spa, right? Where women are doing far more to transform their
Yes.
faces and
Yes.
put lipstick on.
Mhm.
Lipstick almost seems quaint.
Yes.
So I wondered if that was a sense that you had, like, have we moved past lipstick, or does it still have the same cultural meaning?
Especially with the big lips.
Yeah, exactly. So there is an entire section that is also limited in terms of length, but there is a section about lip filler versus lipstick and the irony that full lips, which were in a lot of ways racialized in really pejorative ways, are now being embraced.
Yeah.
So the argument I make is that I think there is a difference in painting the face because paint is temporary and it also announces its own artificiality. And I think there's something about announcing artificiality. It's not, I painted this, I can take it off. It's also temporary. There's something about that I find like, I don't know, you said quaint, but I just find it like less disturbing, I guess, than like really contorting the face to look like very predictable. So with Mar-a-Lago face, that wasn't really around discourse when I was writing this book. I finished this book before Trump came back to office. It's not that I wasn't thinking about all sorts of like political exigencies when I was writing the book, but I do think it's a very 2024 book in a lot of ways. But I will say, like, I do think Mar-a-Lago face is disturbing because of the fact that I feel like it's so homogenous.
Yeah.
I mean, it's disturbing for other reasons, but I feel like for me personally, the homogeneity is more disturbing in a way than the intervention.
I think that homogeneity speaks to there's one way to
Yes.
look attractive, which
Or
is
yeah,
this
exactly.
way.
Which I find that's what is upsetting to me. Like I just find also just it's boring as an aesthetic, and I don't like that.
And we have, I think, time for one last question. Yes. Oh, sorry. Yes.
Okay, so, I hope you can hear me.
Okay.
Oh, great. So I guess this might be a two-part question. The first part is, so you talked to a bunch of different people from different races, genders, and backgrounds. So was there like a through line that you noticed that was like kind of, well, I guess consistent as far as the through line? And then the other question is, you mentioned how, like, say, talking to Black women made you think about things that you hadn't thought about before. was there a moment where you're like, I may have not have thought about this, but I get this, I see this, I have been there, I relate?
I think, yes to both. So in terms of through lines, one of the through lines that I wrote about at the end of chapter 4, the chapter I wrote a little snippet from, one of the things I noticed is, about 100 people filled out the survey. And women of color were a lot more likely to mention their mothers, their grandmothers, their aunts. And I thought that was really beautiful as far as like lipstick legacies. Like there was more reference to other women in the family as a kind of role model among women of color. And that was true not just for Black women, that was true also for South Asian women, that was true for Latinx women. So like that was interesting to me as a through line. And it made me think, okay, in the absence of maybe celebrities, in the absence of celebrities that represent this beauty ideal, family members become this beauty ideal. And I actually felt like that was kind of lovely, the idea that family members would be. So that was something I learned from the book. I guess one of the other things I'm trying to think of with your second question, like something I didn't realize that I kind of got. I think I was just kind of humbled to realize how easy things had been for me in certain ways. Like when you're growing up, when I was growing up, I only focused on what I didn't have. And I kind of make fun of it in the introduction. Like I was teased a lot as a kid for all sorts of different things that I had no control over, or I felt I had no control over. And it's really, I guess growing up, it was easy to just think, well, I was bullied, this was difficult, blah, blah, blah. And I think in the course of writing the book and hearing so many other stories, I realized wow, in a lot of ways, I had it really easy. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's something that I have to acknowledge.
I love that through line you mentioned, because one of my most vivid memories from childhood is being in the bathroom with my mom while she's getting ready and watching her apply lipstick on her face and just staring and thinking oh, this is the most beautiful person I've ever seen in my life. And
Your mom is very beautiful.
Well,
She must be said.
But I mean, that is such a vivid memory. And this is also the other thing I loved so much about the book, is it made me remember things that I had forgotten. And I hope it does the same for everyone who buys it tonight.
I dedicated this book to my mom, and she's not
Mama
really
in the crowd.
my mom has never really been an ardent lipstick wearer, but I dedicated the book to my mom because I in the process of writing the book, I thought about how she could have been really strict and not let me wear lipstick, not let me dye my hair crazy colors, not let me dress in all sorts of ways that many would not have approved of. So I feel like in writing the book, I felt like that would be appropriate.
Well, this was a joy. Thank you guys so much for sharing this conversation with us.
We do have copies of the book available for sale at the desk.
Okay.
We're going to do the signing up here. And I will do her.
Oh, I'm so glad that. And I'm looking.
Hey, how are you?
So now you
Excuse me, John. Sneak behind.
No.